Well, howdy, all you collector car fans out there. This is Jason, the owner and founder of Southern Bush Motorsports. We got a great little treat for you today. This was a place up in North Carolina that I had gone to, and I ended up selling all the guys restored cars. He was just an independent guy. He was restoring cars, and this right here is a 1969 383 Super B. Normally wouldn't be a big deal, but it was an actual mod top car, and that's what the car looked like, brand new. The craziest part about this is the last known roll of mod top material came with this car. And let me tell you something, when people found out that mod top material had surfaced, that was fun, because it was tempting to sell the people were offering as much for the mod top materials as I paid for the car. But the motor was long gone in it, but it was a real mod top car. So what happened with this small restoration shop is that I ended up selling all of his restored cars within a week. I sold like 9 of them. And then he started showing me all these cars that he was going to start. And then I guess he must have started thinking about, his age and what he was going to do with his life. And the reason that I did this video is he basically said, what's it going to take for you to buy me out? And I was like, well, what am I going to do with all this stuff? I don't have a place to put all this stuff. And how am I going to transport it all back down to the south? But we sat outside. It was great because he lived on this big corn farm, and he leased out the property to corn growers, but he had a good bit of property there. We sat out there and talked about it, and he'd been restoring cars for 25, 30 years, and he had NOS parts like you wouldn't believe, 6-pack engines, Hemi this, Hemi that. He only restored the cars that he really wanted to, which a lot of them was Cornettes and Super Bs and Cudas. This right here was a 383, I think it was just a Cornette, but it was a cool, clean car, unrestored, untouched. And I actually bought that car just to drive it around. Yeah, I think it was just a Cornette, but I bought that car and just drove it around. And boy, I turned a lot of heads, lots of questions. Even let people drive it because they'd never driven one before. Totally stock car, nothing fancy about that car at all. But boy, that car was solid and completely untouched. It was just somebody's grocery getter car, and they just, a little rough on the inside there, but completely untouched. It was fun to drive. This was, if I remember right, that was a 6-pack Cuda. Somebody had cut the back end off because they were going to replace the back end. And nothing fancy to that car. It was really weird. It was a 6-pack, but it had real base options on it. But that came with the deal as well. There was a lot of cars that came with this deal, and honest to goodness, I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I don't know what the interior of that is. I think that was of a blue Barracuda you'll see in a little bit that I bought. But, yeah, it was just, look at the car. It's like completely untouched. And he was going to restore the back end of it, and I guess it just happened. There's a row of cars that were sitting out back there. There's a bunch of cars I bought out of that. Nothing super fancy, no Hemi cars or anything like that. There was a 68 Cornette RT, that one right there that he had finished. I bought that one. Matter of fact, I bought that one and sold it a couple hours after I bought it. It's one of those places that I went up there planning on taking pictures for the day, and I ended up living in the guy's field for about a month. I use these camperized vans with water supply and all that stuff, so I can stay out there. I don't think that was a 446 back car. I think it was just a Cornette RT. He put a 446 back hood on it. But super cool car. Fun to deal with. That wasn't a real 6-pack car, but he had a 446 back in it, and that car went like snot, man. Boy, we drove that down to a diner to get something to eat before I let it go off to delivery. And that car was fun. And he did a good job. This old fella, he knew what he was doing. He'd been restoring these cars for 30 years, and he definitely knew what he was doing when he restored these cars. He didn't use NOS parts, but all of his parts were new. He tried to get as many of the original parts cleaned up and fixed as he could. And, except for that battery right there, you can see everything else is correct. But that battery was more or less just so I could get it onto the trailer. But, he kept the original seat belts. Rear seat was done. He paid attention to what he was doing. This was a 71 340 Roadrunner. I picked that up sitting out there. Now look at how solid these cars are. Untouched. That was a satellite. I think that was just a 318 satellite. But again, super, super solid. A little bit of rust on that quarter panel. A little bit of chewing in the in the roof there, but that is what an untouched car looks like. There's a bunch of parts cars out there, but basically what ended up happening is, you know, I ended up selling all of his restored cars. We were just sitting there, and he's like, you know what? I'm done. Give me a price, buy me out. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Where am I even going to put this stuff? And when he got rolling through all the stuff and showing me all the parts and that, I threw him a number, and he's like, done. He goes, but there's a catch to all this. That 69 Super Bee that we got sitting out there, the one I told you was a mod top. He goes, I'm the one that's got the last roll of mod top material. Okay, I don't know what that means, because it really didn't mean anything to me at that point. He's like, I have the last roll of the actual mod top material that they use to put on these cars. And it was a big roll, too. Boy, when the collector car community found out that that roll was about to surface, or that it did surface, you would not believe the numbers that were getting. So that's that mod top car right there, 69 Super Bee. The numbers that were getting thrown at me for that mod top material were, I don't even want, it was high. It was really high, because there's guys that wanted the original mod top material, but there wasn't existed. You know, like that was, I think it was a little Fury or something like that. It wasn't nothing special about it, but look at the completely untouched car. He collected some really weird stuff. That was a 383 Challenger, nothing special, and the car had been beat all to heck, but it looked pretty solid, you know. That was a 69 Roadrunner, I think. You know, it's just a bunch of stuff I didn't need. This Barracuda right here, 318 car. Who cares? No big deal. That's the original paint. It's the original everything on that car. Nothing on that car had been touched. Everything was totally original. That was what we call a grocery getter. That car has got the original paint, original interior, original everything. Look at the interior on that thing. Nothing had been touched on it. Nothing had been touched on it. You know, not a super fast car, not a super rare car, but it sure was fun to drive and got a lot of attention too. And you can see how solid that body is. A lot of people would take that car and put a big engine in it, but as you can see, it was just a 6-cylinder CUDA. That Barracuda, that's it. Boy, that's a super straight car. Turn signal on fenders. But what ended up happening is he started showing me all the stuff that was going to come with this buyout. And a lot of it was parts. Parts. Just, I don't even know what I was going to do with all these parts. Oh, look at that. Plain Jane, that car. 6-cylinder Barracuda. How often do you see one of those? You know, nothing fancy, just a grocery getter. But then we started getting into all the parts that was included with this buyout. And, you know, I was happy to help the fella out, but the hell was I going to do with all these parts? But they weren't junk parts. They were good parts, taken off Barracudas, Challengers, Roadrunners, stuff like that. And tons of NOS stuff. I mean, if it wasn't bolted down into the house, it was mine. I think it took about 2 months to get all this stuff out of there, because I had to categorize it and label it. You know, there's Superbird parts right there, and 4-speed consoles and NOS parts, all labeled, perfectly organized. Sure, it's really time-consuming trying to sell all these parts, but you look at these doors right here, all rust-free doors, plum crazy purple, red GTX door. You know, there was consoles everywhere, NOS parts like you wouldn't believe. How many people wouldn't kill for that radiator cap? NOS radiator cap. Yeah, lots of tail lights and stuff. He basically, sometimes he'd get these cars he just knew wasn't savable, but he'd strip the heck out of these cars and make sure he got all the parts off of them. And he was a drag racer too. He had some drag cars. I went and watched them race. It was pretty cool to watch them race. But you know, there was rims and parts everywhere, moldings, really crucial moldings. A lot of Superbird parts, because I got to this guy because that original truck driver that said he thought he saw a Superbird in the field, and I went to go get it, and he had already sold it to this guy right here, and he had already restored the car, and I got pictures of it at a car show. But a lot of these parts came out of the Superbird and Challengers and all that stuff right there. You know, there's a nice Barracuda seat right there. He didn't throw anything out. If it was good, he kept it. And smart, because it's, you know, pretty big operation he had going on, and the parts just were everywhere. There's a 6-pack carburetor there, no big deal. That wasn't NOS, but the parts that were in that box were NOS. Like bezels and stuff, like just smart enough to take all these parts off the cars that he knew he'd have to crush, but You know, it kept everything. Like, look at that 4-speed console right there. Boy, I tell you, when I was restoring one of my cars, I had to kill for that thing. You know, you got Barracuda grills and rear louvers, Barracuda louvers, Mopar parts, NOS parts. He kept a lot of the sheet metal and stuff. He had just buildings full of this stuff. And, you know, this is a lot of work trying to get rid of all this stuff. There wasn't much I could do about it, but just do it and don't cry about it. But thank goodness he was smart enough to label all this stuff. There's an idea, all the parts that are stuck up there. And like I said, he was a small restoration shop. He'd do about 4 cars a year, but he did really great work. All of his cars were show winners. Every single one of them. NOS air filter. Look at that Route 66. That's not NOS, but see all those air filters was crazy. Absolutely crazy. And you had wiring harnesses and stuff like that. They were pretty important when you're restoring a car if you got the original wiring harness. But then there was this kind of stuff, it was a little rough to deal with this kind of stuff here, but ended up clearing the whole place out. I can't tell, I don't even know how long it took me to do that. I think that's the interior of that Barracuda with the back end cut off, the 6-pack car. But that's a 440 engine there, fresh rebuild, ready to go. There were some 6-pack engines in there too, you know, Barracuda covers, 68 Coronet, tail lights. So much stuff. It was so hard to get rid of this. That was a fresh 446 pack for a Barracuda that he had built. There's another big block Mopar engine. Just stuff everywhere. He was going to keep going. Look at that instrument clutch. He was just going to keep going, but you know, fate had its way, and I met up with the guy, and that was it. I ended up being over there, and nothing I can do about that. Well, I appreciate you coming by and checking another Tales from the Bush, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and hang on, we got more coming at you.